Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into some source material that details the creation and purpose of a pretty vital creative project.
That's right. We're looking at personal notes, manifestos,
hmm
things that really lay out an act of self-preservation that grew into something much bigger.
So we're talking about the project from Lindsay, the podcast Down the Rabbit Hole, Unfiltered, and the book that goes with it, stripped down piece by fucking piece.
Exactly. And this isn't really a review of the content itself. It's more about understanding the why behind it, the absolute necessity that drove her to create this entirely new kind of space for survivors.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Based on the material, what is the core mission? Why did she feel like she had to create something so raw, so unfiltered?
Well, the sources are really clear. The foundational purpose, really, is to normalize the ugly truth of what healing actually looks like.
So it's a three-part mission, it seems.
I'd say so. First, raise awareness of the more insidious forms of abuse.
Hmm.
Second, make sure survivors feel seen, really seen. And third, just fundamentally break the silence around how chaotic recovery is.
And the summaries promise a lot. I mean, surviving abuse, trauma recovery, emotional healing, it's all there. But what really struck me is that it's not just her story.
No.
It's positioned as a resource hub. The sources specifically mention wanting to provide actual tools for people, support lines, survivor spaces, things you can actually use.
And that inclusion of practical resources, it tells you a lot.
Yeah.
It shows this is grounded in a real-world need, not just catharsis.
Right.
But the real power comes from the specific void she was trying to fill. When she was healing, she was looking for a voice that didn't sugarcoat any of it.
A voice that just said it like it is.
Exactly. She needed a space that would just look her in the eye and say, you're not crazy, you're not broken, you're just trying to survive abuse no one ever taught you how to even recognize.
That validation is everything. So it wasn't just about general mental health support. It was about naming the actual trauma mechanism.
Yeah, the existing narratives just didn't have that granularity. They skipped the messy parts. And that frustration, that's what leads us right to the creation story. The sources are so clear about what this project is not built on.
And that's a crucial point. She didn't start this because she was, quote, fully healed or had some picture-perfect version of recovery to sell.
Absolutely not. It's so important to get this. The project was born from an ongoing crisis, not from a sense of completion. It started when she was at her weakest.
So if not strength, then what was the core reason?
Just necessity. She describes it as needing somewhere to put the pain. For years, she carried it all alone. And the sources say, alone in the truest, most terrifying way.
So the podcast and the book were basically a way to get it out before
Before it consumed her.
Yeah.
It was a lifeline.
Okay, here's where we really need to slow down because the sources detailed this specific turning point, this rock bottom moment.
They do. 2 years before the project started. And this wasn't just a bad time. This was total depletion.
To the point where she was questioning if she could even keep going.
Right. And she makes this profound distinction here. She says it wasn't just depression. It was being, and this is her phrase, done carrying the weight.
Done carrying the weight.
Done explaining, done justifying.
Yeah.
Just done. It was the exhaustion that comes after years of trying to stay afloat.
So the sources suggest that real healing can start not with strength, but with a kind of strategic surrender.
Exactly. When you're completely wrecked sitting on the floor, you realize you can't keep doing what you've been doing. That's when the shift happens. She saw there was no other choice but to start choosing me.
And what did choosing me look like?
It wasn't some big burst of motivation. It meant she had to become a student of her own trauma. It meant asking the really hard question, what actually happened to me?
Because she couldn't even name it at that point.
Incredibly, no. She admitted she couldn't categorize the different kinds of abuse she'd been through. And that confusion, that inability to name it, is exactly why the project had to exist.
That inability to define it is such a classic result of gaslighting. And that brings us to the wide scope of the abuse she was dealing with.
It's so important to see how it was all compounded. We're talking emotional, mental, verbal, sexual, and physical abuse across different relationships.
So not one bad event, it was a pattern.
A sustained, intersecting pattern of destruction that just left her completely fractured.
And the notes give these striking examples of how the abuse showed up, how it wasn't just one thing.
No, it operated on these two different, but equally damaging frequencies. On one side, you had the loud stuff, the chaos and screaming.
But then there was the other side.
The quiet side. The silence, control, and manipulation behind closed doors. And that confusing cycle of affection one minute and total destruction the next. It keeps you perpetually off balance.
And if gaslighting is the tool, then self-blame is the result. How do the sources describe that internal confusion?
They paint this picture of a circular nightmare. You're constantly fighting a reality someone else has built for you. So you start to spiral, you question your sanity, your memory,
Your own worth?
everything. The goal of the abuser is to make you believe you're the one causing the chaos.
Uh-huh.
And it leads to this devastating self-blame even when you're just trying to survive. You basically become your own jailer.
And the notes mention an experience of sexual violation that was marked by a really extreme kind of emotional erasure. It mentions dissociation. Can you explain that state for anyone who might not know?
She describes it as moments where someone did what they wanted with my body like I didn't even exist. So dissociation here is the mind's escape hatch. It's a way to psychologically leave when you physically can't.
The ultimate protective mechanism.
Yes, but the core pain of it, as she explains, is that feeling of being completely erased. That it wasn't just physical, it was confirmation that you, as a person, just don't matter.
That connection between the physical act and the emotional invalidation, that's what has the long-term impact. We're talking years of betrayal and being misunderstood.
And that's why healing is so hard.
Mm.
The abuse doesn't stop when you leave.
Yeah.
The damage is already internalized. The self-blame, the fear, it's all still there. And that's what this project is trying to dismantle.
Okay, so this gives us the perfect foundation for the next part, the unfiltered reality of healing. If the typical recovery narrative is too polished, what are the specific ugly truths this podcast wants to show?
It really aims to validate the hardest parts. Like, she meticulously explains how emotional abuse isn't just hurt feelings. It completely destroys your sense of self.
It rewires you.
It does. And she insists that physical abuse isn't always about visible bruises. The control can be so much more subtle.
And it also challenges a huge societal blind spot around intimacy and violation.
Yes, this is a huge point in the sources, that sexual violation inside a relationship still absolutely counts as abuse.
A point that is so often minimized or just ignored.
Which just makes the self-blame worse for the survivor. And then the project also dives into that brutal confusion of loving someone who destroys you, that complex grief.
Let's talk about the mechanics of healing she describes. What does this messy process actually look like day to day?
The sources describe it as brutal, anything but a straight line. Healing is. It's bursts of rage, it's overwhelming confusion, it's periods of just completely shutting down.
And dissociation, body memories.
All of it. The terrifying resurgence of physical sensations tied to old trauma. And it's all wrapped up in constant shame, fear, and just sheer exhaustion.
So less of a journey toward the light and more of a constant grinding war.
That's a good way to put it. She defines it as fighting every day to show up. For work, for your kids, for yourself. All while wondering if you'll ever feel normal again. The project just validates that survival is grueling work.
And her motivation for sharing all this vulnerability, it comes back to that idea of necessity.
Right. She says it plainly. Sharing isn't an option. It's a survival imperative. If she doesn't get the trauma out, it will keep eating me alive.
So it's not self-help content. It's a raw act of survival.
Detailing the real cost of abuse and the real demands of recovery.
Okay, let's pivot to the audience. Now, Lindsay is speaking from her experience as a woman, but the sources are very clear. This project isn't just for women.
No, it's for anyone. Anyone who has been silenced, manipulated, made to question their worth, or had to rebuild themselves from rock bottom. The mechanism of abuse is universal.
And the sources also draw this powerful line about who this space is not for. It's not for people looking for a neat, tidy ending.
That's the heart of the community she's building. This space is emphatically not for those who got a clean ending.
Right.
It is, and I'm quoting here, for the ones still unraveling the mess, still triggered by the smallest thing, still rebuilding, still grieving the version of themselves they lost.
It's for people in the middle of it.
Exactly. It's an ongoing conversation, meant to meet you right where you are.
So how do the two formats, the podcast and the book, work together?
They're a cohesive system. The podcast is the immediate, raw, ongoing conversation. The book is the more systematic, unapologetic breakdown of what abuse does and how you rebuild.
Piece by piece.
Piece by piece. They both carry that message. The dual format gives you both the urgent check-in and the long-term reflection.
And it becomes so clear that the value of this whole project is in its origin. It was made out of necessity, from a place of not being okay, not from some polished, recovered pedestal.
And that's the whole philosophy. That shift from trying to survive
Yeah.
to deliberately choosing me, it's a blueprint for how to start when you feel completely broken.
When you feel like the other resources have failed you.
It's a testament to that messy act of self-preservation, of deciding to learn about your own trauma when everything else has just collapsed.
And in the end, the creator has this really specific hope for anyone who finds this work.
She does. She hopes listeners feel less alone, less crazy, less ashamed, more seen.
And more ready to come home to yourself piece by fucking piece.
That shift from shame and isolation to recognition and self-acceptance, that's the whole goal, giving people the language to step out of the shadows.
It is. So we'll leave you with this thought based on this creator's journey. In your own life, what's the experience, the pain, or the confusion you've carried alone because you felt you didn't have the words of the validation to name it? What does it truly mean to finally get the language for what you couldn't name before, and in doing so, claim your right to rebuild? That's the work that begins when the truth is finally unfiltered.